Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So in this video, I want to talk about what just happened to XRP. Look at the carnage. I mean, gosh, this is quite the decline. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about how this does not change anything. The great fake out is still going to happen. Let me show you what I think is taking place on this chart right now. So to begin with, I have placed this fractal that comes from over here in fractal 2. If we zoom in, so here we are zoomed in. So this entire structure was a deviation. Price was supposed to be trending up and come to this peak gradually. Instead, it remained flat and even dropped near the end before shooting up. This is a common thing that can take place right before a move up. Let me move a little forward in time and show you another point where this same phenomenon took place. Okay, so here is the fractal that XRP has been following. This is from the macro structure. I'll show you that in a minute. But as you can see here, this whole part right here where there are no blue lines on it, this was also a deviation. And just as importantly, this was a deviation that suffered a decline right before it moves up. So what is happening over here, while this is extreme, is not out of the ordinary. Let's jump back over here and examine this a little closer. Okay, so here we are zoomed in, and this purple fractal is the fractal from the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit ruling right before it moved up. This is the one that we have been following in my last few videos since it began to deviate from the normal fractal it had been following. Now, as you can see, there was meant to be a decline here. This was just very extreme. I mean, it is just like crazy extreme. But nonetheless, it is taking place, or it took place right where it should have taken place. That is because this structure, even with this, is still following this fractal. So why do I say that? Well, when a fractal or a structure repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, those are going to be original. Those do not copy over from the original structure. So that can allow for that same structure that is being repeated to play out on a larger time frame or a smaller time frame, or have parts of a structure that can be exaggerated like we see here. So where does that leave us then? Well, it is my belief that we are actually still working on this area right here. Now, there could be a deviation, and let me zoom out to show you. So if you notice in this fractal right here, fractal 1, where price declines, after this sharp decline, it does basically 2 bounces before moving back up. We have the same thing that takes place over here. After this sharp decline, it has these 2 basic bounces before moving up. So that is a possibility. Let's zoom back in real quick. Okay, so here we are zoomed in again. So that bounce that I just showed you, it could potentially play out something like this. We had this decline right here, which was very sharp and drastic. Now it is moving up. That is this right here, which would be this. And eventually it would move down like this again. I don't know how low this would go. It could potentially try to come down pretty low, maybe challenge this, and then move back up and complete this part. Of course, this would all be further down here. So that is a possibility. There is also a possibility that this moves down even lower than here and then moves back up again into this. If it did that, I believe it'd only be a brief thing, and I'll show you why I believe that in a minute. Before I do that, I want to show you the macro structure so you can have an idea of what we are following and how this here still leads to the great fake out. Okay, so we're zoomed out quite far here, and this here is the macro structure. Now, if you go further back on the chart, it's the same basic idea. And that idea is XRP has its bull runs. After the bull runs comes a decline. After the decline comes this range-bound sideways time. I take this sideways time and break it up into three separate fractals, fractal 1, fractal 2, and fractal 3. In fractal 1, price moves up, it moves back down again in part A, and then in this case it goes flat. Sometimes it arches up and kind of winds down a bit. We see that over here with part A, it moves up, moves down, and then it goes flat. In fractal 2, it has three basic waves, wave A, wave B, wave C. We have that over here with wave A, wave B, and wave C. In fractal 3, essentially price moves up to a peak, it then crashes, it recovers, does a smaller correction before going into the bull run. This one is what we are following right here. This iteration of it has played out many times in the past. With this one, there has been a bounce here, and then it moves up. It does this second kind of wave or bounce before moving up again drastically to the peak and then crashing. I am calling this part right here the great fake out. So the move up to a peak is part A, the crash is part B. This is the great fake out. We are very close to that. We are like right here. So it is on the cusp of moving up into the great fake out. Just as these parts have not failed ever, actually. You go back further in time and it's the same basic idea. Now, it plays out different every single time, and that's because the timing, height, and depth, it's always going to be unique every single time a structure repeats, but it always has the same basic characteristics. Fractal 2 always has the three bounces. Fractal 3 always moves up to a peak, then crashes, and then recovers, does that little correction before moving into the bull run. So this is the great fake out. How it plays out on the small time frame on these little parts, you can get lost in the weeds trying to track it. And as we can see, it's challenging to do that. A lot of analysts stay away from trying to predict ranges. With this type of technical analysis, you have a better shot at it, but even then, you still get hit with curveballs, and it's challenging, especially when you get close to a move up. That's where it gets really hard to predict. As I showed you before, those moves down, those are all deviations that take place. Now I want to show you what I was talking about earlier, an observation, how this here is really just being repeated over here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So if you notice in fractal 3 right here, well, it actually begins at the end of fractal 2. Okay, so here we are zoomed in. And what I've done here is I've placed a trend line, something that I don't use much in my technical analysis, but every now and then I will use it, as in today. So you see that in part C of fractal 2, the final wave, it comes to a peak and then declines, and it hits this trend line. Well, it's the beginning of the trend line, if you will. It then bounces, hits it again over here. It then bounces up again and hits it again over here. In fact, if we zoom in here even further, we'll see that it actually goes below it. And then you have the great fake out. And folks, this is a possibility right here, even going lower. Now let's jump over to today's chart and examine it. So here is that trend line. Now I started it way over here because it still works. So here is fractal 2, the final wave of fractal 2. Wave C comes down and touches it. It bounces up again, comes back and touches it. And on the part that we are at right now, what does it do? It comes down and touches it. In fact, let's zoom in here. It even goes below it. So, folks, we are literally following history to a T over here. So, here's my message to you. We are close to the great fake out. We should begin to see a move up soon. It is likely going to be an aggressive move up. I don't know how high it will go. I don't know how low it will go. My advice to you is not to try to match price to the fractals that I draw on this chart, because you are going to have challenges if you do that. Timing, height, and depth is going to be unique. If you want to try to decipher that, you can use fibs to try to figure that out, or your favorite indicator, but don't use what I draw here and look over here to try to plan your trading. That is bound to be a mistake. So here we are zoomed in at today's chart, and I have the macro structure, the structure from Fractal 3 that we just examined that has the fake out. And as you can see, it's followed it fairly close. This here was a deviation, or it just went lower than it should have. The same with this. So if you notice how it moves up here, it has this little dip. Here it's very small. Here it's very large. So we need to complete this part right here. So that could play out as two bounces before moving up, or it could potentially be something like this too. We'll have to see how this materializes, but know this, we are getting close to the move up of the great fake out. The great fake out is still on the table. Nothing has changed as far as that goes. 2024 is going to be an awesome year for XRP. We've got exciting days. This is just something that we need to work through before we move on into this part of the chart. This part of the chart is coming, folks, just as all the other fractals materialize the way they should. This one will also do the same. If you found this video helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. I'm not a financial advisor, so none of this should be used as financial or investment advice. But if you did enjoy this video and you would like to see more of this and you're not a subscriber yet, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. This type of technical analysis is original. You're not going to find it anywhere else. I will be continuing to follow this chart as it continues to develop. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.